All right, hello everyone. I think that we are live. So first off, I just want to say welcome to this special lesson. I say it's a special lesson because I'm, as you can probably tell, for people who've watched my videos before, I'm not at home right now. But this is going to be a Q&A lesson. I want to answer some of your questions, any questions that you have related to learning English. And the first thing I want to say, because this is a bit of a new setup, please let me know if everything is working okay, if the audio is okay. I apologize because I'm not using the same camera that I usually use, so that I think it may look a little more grainy and the audio might not be as good as it usually is. But that again is because I'm traveling. But please say hello to me in the chat, or even if you're watching this later, write to me in the comments. I love hearing from new people, but I also enjoy hearing from those that have seen from time and time again. So I want to give a quick shout out, say hello to some of you, some very familiar faces. Hello, Lolly, Gertrudis, Vicky, and Gustav, Takayao, Judith, Sleepwalker. Glad you guys can join me. Everything's okay. Excellent. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you guys for letting me know. So the first question, I'm going to jump right into it. I'm going to take some member questions. I'll go through those first, and then I'll try to get through as many as I possibly can, and I'll try to go through them quickly. The one thing I would ask, if you have some questions, try to make your questions as precise as possible, as specific as possible, because when they're very broad, it's a lot more time-consuming to try and answer, and I want to try to get through as many as possible. The first question that I want to answer is actually Vicky and Gustav. Gustav had written to me when I posted that I'm going to do a live lesson. And the first question that he asked was about the word advice, and wondering about if there is a plural form for this noun. And it's a great question because I think it can be very confusing, because you have other words like suggestion that has somewhat of a similar meaning, and it is countable. So there is a difference in that advice is considered, it's an abstract noun because it's not something that you can really picture in your mind. And it's a mass noun, so it is a non-count noun. And when you have a non-count noun, you are not going to use it in the plural form. So you cannot say that you would say I gave him 3 pieces of advice. And the first thing I would say about this, if you're talking about a piece of advice, that would be a quantifier. And you're typically going to use quantifiers with non-count nouns, like a piece of advice. Or like somebody might say, like a slice of pizza, a glass of water. And you use those quantifiers with those non-count nouns. But to go back to what I was saying before about advice and suggestion, suggestion is a countable noun. And you could say, I have 3 suggestions for you. And you add that S at the end. There is no real relationship, I think, between those 2 words, even though they have somewhat of a similar meaning. When you learn them, it's just a matter of just learning that vocabulary that, okay, advice, I know the meaning of this. It is a non-count noun. I'm not going to use, there is no plural form. Suggestion, it is a count noun, and I can use it in a plural form. So it's not, I know it's not probably the best explanation, besides just saying that yes, advice is non-count, suggestion is a count noun, but it's just having to learn that, and I think over time you'll get a little more familiar with it. So somebody along those lines, because this is kind of related to that, Seng Kong asks, how do you pronounce advice and advise? So advice, the noun, that C is going to sound like an S, advice. Advise, that's the verb, to advise someone. And in this case, that S is going to have more of a Z sound, that voiced Z, advise. I advise you guys to, well, write me some questions in the chat. I advise you to watch some of the other video lessons, because I think it'll help you. So that's related to that. So that's why I kind of wanted to go through that. Let me go back a little bit to the beginning. Phil-san, Farak-san has, I want to ask how to learn English by watching movies and what I do when I watch movies. So I think watching movies or listening to music, TV, those are great ways to passively learn the language. And what I mean by you're learning passively is that you're not really doing anything, you're just watching it. But I think to make it more meaningful, if you could try to turn it into some active exercise, which means that you really have to focus and that you have to do something at the end. So if you want to, like, to give you an example, like watching a movie, to make it an active exercise is watch a movie, and then once it's done, write like a short summary. What is the movie about? And then you're trying to remember what the movie's about. You're trying to think of the vocabulary that you would use to write this summary so that somebody else would understand what this movie is about. And in doing that, you're making it an active exercise. So that would be my suggestion about, like, if you're doing some passive learning, try to make it active. So let's see. What is it? Yours truly asked, what is the difference between I had a car and I have had a car? So you're talking about the difference between the past and the present perfect. It really depends on the situation, the grammar. Oftentimes, those could be used interchangeably, and people say them, and it has the same meaning. I had a car in the past. Again, you're talking about it's finished. Present perfect, like I've had a car, and then you're really referencing it to something else that might be going on in the present. Like I've had a car like that years ago, but then maybe now you have a different type of car. I think I would really, in this case, if you wanted to finish the sentence, maybe I could give you a bit more clarity as to what, but in that case, I think it really depends on the context of the situation, but probably you might be able to use them interchangeably. Let's see, Tatiana asks, how to get advanced level of English? I'm intermediate and very frustrated. Yes. I think that this is a common challenge that I think many learners go through, is that, and I think it's normal. When you start out learning a language, it's normal to feel like you're making a lot of progress because it's new, because there's so much that you can learn, new words for you to learn. And then as your skills start to improve, I think it really starts to level out, perhaps even go down a little where you feel like you're not learning as much, and then it goes up kind of slowly the more advanced your language skills become. So I think one thing, if you're frustrated, I think it's good to try to kind of find your motivation again, to find ways to get motivated so you can continue learning, whether it's trying to stay motivated because you're going to go traveling, or you're trying to stay motivated because you're getting ready to take some classes. So if you can find that motivation to keep it going. But yeah, I think it's normal that as your skills really start to improve, it is going to level out a little bit. Let's see. Let's go back because I want to get some members. Lolly asks, I always confuse effective and efficient. Could you give me some examples, please? So to me, I think if something is very effective, I would say it's very useful, it's very meaningful. So I could say that talking about building vocabulary, and people might talk about the method of chunking. And I know I'm going off tangent. Chunking is when you're building your vocabulary, but you're really learning phrases. Instead of focusing on a word, you're learning phrases. Now, I could say that, well, if you use chunking to build your vocabulary, it's very effective. And when I say it's effective, I mean it would be meaningful in that it's really going to help you improve. When I think of the word efficient, I think it's more so not about it's meaningful and important, But efficient, I always think that time is related to that, that it's a faster way to do something. And you could say, well, that is very efficient. You're getting the job done, and you're really doing it in the quickest way possible. So I think in terms of I think business is a situation, a context in which you might hear people use the word efficient. Like, we need to do things efficiently. We need to get the job done so that it's done correctly, but we need to do it in the shortest amount of time possible. So that's one distinction that I'd make between effective and efficient, in terms of effective being really meaningful and important and really helpful in what you're doing. Efficient would be really also time is related to that, and you're doing it in the quickest way possible. Khan asks, what's the difference between jail, prison, and penitentiary? They're really just, I really think they're really just synonyms. I don't know if, I guess you could say prison to me is really kind of the building, like the institution of prison where people would spend longer periods of time there. Jail, I think, just refers to if somebody's in prison, they're also in jail. But jail refers to the action of being, I think, you are contained. So oftentimes at a police station may have a jail where they can detain somebody and they keep them there, and maybe they're behind some bars, but it's not prison. Prison would be where somebody would permanently be for a longer period of time. And I think penitentiary, unless I might be incorrect, but I feel like that's more of a synonym for a prison. Vicious asks, what is the best way to improve my writing? I think with anything, like the four main skills is just to practice. First off, like to try to write as much as you can. Emails, summaries, like I mentioned, you could take watching a movie, make it an active exercise. The other thing that I would mention with writing, which I come back to a lot, reading. Reading really helps. I think those, the same way like listening and speaking, I think really complement each other as language skills. Reading and writing, they also complement each other. When you're reading, you are actually seeing the correct grammar structure being used. You might be identifying new vocabulary, and you get a feel for how they're using that word in context. So I think reading is also very important. That's going to help you improve your writing skills in the long run, even with little things like prepositions, because I know prepositions are mistakes, simple mistakes that people might make. They use the wrong preposition, but when you're reading, you get to see that. Let's see, I want to go back to, sorry, I'm kind of going back, Vicky Gustav. Oh God, with those German movies. Yes, that could be challenging if it's from another country. Let's see, I'm kind of gonna go back through. Sorry, I know I'm getting a lot. Joe Brown asks, this is a question I think a lot of people have. Could you be fluent in English without moving to an English-speaking country, to the US or the UK? Absolutely. I think nowadays, of course, if you live somewhere, for many people, I'll include myself, I think it's mentally, it might feel easier to learn the language because you're there and you have that motivation. As soon as you walk out the door, you know that you need to speak that language, which is a great motivation to continue, like, okay, I need to practice, I need to read, I need to listen, and you're really more motivated to continue learning. I think, though, when you live in another country, one of the great values, which I think was more relevant a long time ago, was the amount of exposure you can get. Because you go somewhere, you're listening to the language, you have to speak it, you're getting a lot of exposure to the language. But nowadays, with like right now, you guys, we could not do this 30 years ago. But right now, you guys are watching me from somewhere else in the world. You're listening to me speak English. You're writing to me in the chat. Those are using two language skills right there. it's easy to get a lot of exposure to the language without having to go live in the US or live in the UK. The real question would then be, like somebody else had asked before about their, and I said motivation, talking about moving from intermediate to advanced, is having that motivation. So if you are disciplined and motivated, then you could take time, surround yourself with the language as much as possible, even from like your own country, and you're constantly listening to English, reading in English. The only other challenge that might be a little more difficult could be the speaking part of it. And maybe you're having trouble trying to find somebody to practice speaking with. But that would be the only other suggestion, which actually could be a good segue. I did want to tell you guys that there is still 1 week left. If you would like to get a little more speaking practice, you could still enroll in my speaking course, which is called Speak Up. It's all about helping you speak confidently, clearly, naturally. Enrollment is open. Enrollment is going to close, I think, on August 9th. There's a link in the description. I'll throw a link in the chat here as well. I thought it'd be a good segue. Somebody was talking about to get more speaking practice. It is an online class. You can also use the code. Let me write this. Code SPEAK10 to get a 10% discount. All right. If you have any questions, also email me info@interactiveenglishvideos.com. But we do classes once a week for an hour long. You're speaking with me and your other classmates. There are weekly lesson previews, pronunciation video lessons. There's also a lot included. I'll mention this a little bit later on, but I thought it was a good segue into talking about that. We're talking about practicing your speaking skills. Let's see, we have some other questions. Gosh, we're getting a lot. Sorry if I can't go through these as quickly as I would like. Some guy said we should create an English niche for ourselves to improve our English skills. Yeah, like I don't know if your suggestion would be like an English niche, like finding something, a topic, something you are, as far as motivation is concerned, to help continue your learning and do that. I know that I'm a big proponent of finding a topic, focusing in on that, which is, again, what we do in the speaking course. We're just doing one topic a week, learning some vocabulary related to it, talking about that topic. And I do the same with some of those other video lessons. I don't know, for those of you who have followed the channel for a while, and I haven't done them recently, and I need to do another one because I always attach it to some fundraising event, but I would do reading. And I would choose a topic, could be about education, and we'd look at different articles related to education, and I would just pick out words and highlight words and vocabulary. And the idea that as we go through those articles, typically we find the same word that you again and again and again within different articles about the same topic. And that's a great way to build your vocabulary, which is, I know, a long way, a long explanation getting back to finding your niche. Let's see. This Claire asks, is there a word called thrice or 3 times like twice? I think the short answer, yes, but it's not used. I would tell you to use, just say 3 times. Thrice, I think it's Old English. I feel like people might use it nowadays to kind of be funny or charming. But I think it's more Old English, and it's not something you're really going to hear. I would just say stick with 3 times. You're not going to confuse people that way. So he says, I'm on deep course. I usually make more mistakes in writing. How could I improve that? What I would do when I would teach writing, and I know it can be a little more challenging on your own, would be to kind of keep a writing journal. And it's like a journal of mistakes. And what I would suggest is you'd write a paragraph about a topic and then go back through your writing and try to self-correct. And what I mean by that is, instead of just reading and looking for all the different mistakes, take one thing at a time, like spelling, and go through, just look for spelling mistakes, nothing else, and see if you can find any. And then go back to the beginning and then look for, maybe like capitalization and punctuation. And did you make any mistakes? Did you remember to capitalize all the first letter of the first word of each new sentence? Go back, look for mistakes with articles, a, an, and the. Did you use them correctly? And see if you can self-correct and find those mistakes, and then make a chart and write how many mistakes you had for each one. And then do the same thing for the next writing, and then the next one, and the next one. And over time, you should see kind of where you're making more mistakes. And this is what I would do with my classes. And it would show some learners that, oh, okay, one student is making a lot of spelling mistakes. So that's what they need to focus on to improve their writing. This other student over here is making a lot of mistakes with subject-verb agreement, like I do, he, she doesn't. And that's what they need to focus on. So it's a good way to really try to self-correct, but kind of understand what are some of your writing weaknesses at the same time. Takayo asks, should I not mix up pronunciations of words in American English and British English in one sentence? I think I had mentioned before, I think in conversation, if you're pronouncing words using British English, American English, I don't think it really matters. Both are accepted, both are okay. I'm not sure if you're having, I don't think there's nothing that's incorrect about it. I don't know if it would cause some kind of confusion, or somebody might notice that if you say, especially in the same sentence, I'm trying to think, okay, I just recently had a lesson talking about that. And I'll just give you an example with the word, I would say in the US, advertisement. In British English, you would say advertisement. Same with in the US, people would say tomatoes. In the UK, tomato. So if you said something like, I just saw an advertisement for tomatoes, then maybe that might cause somebody to kind of think about that for a second. It's not wrong if you're pronouncing them in the same sentence. But I would not say it's not incorrect or anything, but somebody might notice it or pick up on that and that it's a little unique. But I really don't think, I don't want to say that you kind of need to choose one or the other and that's what you need to go for. I think it's good to learn and understand that there are different pronunciations among different varieties. I'll give you an example. It's very interesting because I'm traveling right now with my family. And in that same lesson, I talked about aluminum in the US and aluminium in the rest of the world, pretty much English-speaking world. And we're in Italy right now, and they had asked, they said to my parents if they would like an aluminium box to take it away, to take some food to go. And my parents were very confused by this. And I had to explain to him that, they thought it might have been, the Italian-English accent. And I was saying, no, this is aluminium. It's the same word. It's just in British English. But I thought that was interesting because I had just done a lesson about that recently. Let's see. Here's an answer again. Takayo said, if you start learning American English, should you only keep learning American English? No, I don't think so. I think it's great to get exposure to as many different English varieties as possible. And I would even include like English as a second language. I think it's good to learn there is a French English accent. I think it's good for other learners in other countries to kind of understand that, to get exposure to that. That's just my opinion, but I think it's good. Phantom Tung, sorry if I mispronounce names. How to have a deeper voice when speaking more confidently like you. I really don't know. I didn't know if you think I have a deep voice, maybe. But possibly. I feel like maybe people do relate the tone or intonation as a confidence thing, possibly. A deeper voice, maybe you would just need to speak more from your chest. But I don't know if that's really necessary for building your confidence. I think if you're looking about talking about building your confidence when speaking, I think just it goes back to building your vocabulary, having discussions and conversations before getting that practice. Because when you have practice, if you're talking about something like, I don't know, even like climate change, and that can be a more specific topic. But when you have that discussion with somebody else, maybe a month passes by and you have another discussion, another conversation about climate change. You've already practiced it once before. Even though it's a different conversation, you had that practice before, and you're going to feel a little more confident when it comes to expressing your thoughts and opinions and ideas. And that's where I say, like, I do think speaking practice, it is important, especially when it's related to confidence. Let's see. Zinat asks, what is the difference between cut down and cut back? So those are both phrasal verbs. To cut down, I would typically think people might often use it as a 3-word phrasal verb. Like for me, I need to cut down on chocolate and my chocolate intake. I think I eat too much. I need to cut down on it, like reduce the amount. In that sense, like cut back, I would say I need to cut back on. Yeah, I think cut back has a similar meaning. You would say, like, I need to cut back on this. You need to reduce the amount. I also think, like, yeah, to lessen would be to lessen something. So I think in that context, even the one I just gave you, now that I'm thinking about it off of the top of my head, I could use them and it has the same meaning. I need to cut down on chocolate. I need to cut back on chocolate. Same meaning. Like, you need to consume less of it. You need to reduce the amount. So in that case, you could use them interchangeably. I can't think of any thing off the top of my head that would be, okay, this is a completely 2 different context. If I do think of one, I'll come back to this. Annie asks, can you give us a lesson about funny phrases in English? I don't understand when I'm watching an English sitcom. So maybe I'll think about that as funny. I'm not sure what phrases somebody might consider funny. I did a lesson before about some strange idioms, and I think that could count as like funny phrases because they are a bit unusual. For example, like the idiom, and I think most of the time probably you might be referring to idioms like somebody saying, hold your horses. And if you tell somebody, hold your horses, it just means to, like, wait a moment. Give me a moment. Hold your horses. Somebody's being impatient, you tell them to hold your horses. All right, let's go back. I'm going to move back a little bit and see if you guys... Oh, gosh, maybe I'm getting a little behind in the questions. All right. So Sleep asks, what's the difference between, like, not real versus not realistic? So... real and realistic, I mean, they are both, they're both adjectives, but I would say that, again, real means to me like something really exists. Like if I'm talking about like ghosts, and you maybe don't believe in them, and you would say ghosts are just, they're not real. Like this thing just does not exist. If you're talking about realistic, I think realistic more, it's not about whether something exists, it's whether or not something is practical and maybe it can be done. So in that case, maybe you have some idea that you're going to do something and you tell me that you are, I don't know, going to swim across the English Channel, like something that is incredibly difficult to do. And I would say, well, that's just not very realistic. Like it's not practical. So I wouldn't say it couldn't exist, that it's not real, because of course anybody could jump into the English Channel, try to swim across it, whether they made it or not. But you would say that, well, that idea is just not realistic. So I think more, if you're talking about realistic, it's used in that sense about whether or not something is practical or not. Let's see. I'm trying to think. Oleg says, would you make an entire video about academic writing? How to do introduction, development, conclusion? Yeah, I've thought about that. I did a lesson before about academic writing, and it proved to be pretty popular, and I think a lot of people enjoyed it. And it made me realize, okay, I should probably go back to that, talk a little bit more about writing. If, let's see, if you guys are looking for this, improve your academic writing. If you haven't seen it, I'll link it right there. Somebody else was asking about like those funny phrases, and I said I did like strange and weird idioms. I'll throw that in the chat as well. So I think these could be considered some funny phrases. Let's see. What else do we have? Kind of moving backwards. Meg says, instead, I feel like you have a very clear voice. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm glad. I'm glad that, again, the lessons, if you understand my pronunciation, the way I explain things, that makes me feel happy, first of all, because yes, I hope that the lessons are easy to follow and understand, as like a lot of the explanations. Christina says, hi, it's great to be here. Great to have you here. Out of the blue, you've turned up on my screen. It's the first live class. Well, welcome, Christina. I like that expression too, out of the blue. If you're not familiar, for those of you, if you're not familiar with that phrase, if something happens like out of the blue, it's just like all of a sudden or suddenly. And it was like all of a sudden, and it's also something that wasn't expected. And it's like I just showed up out of the blue, that it was not expected, and then I'm here. Chayanika asks, what is the best way to learn idioms? I think, again, idioms are probably, it's going to be something you're probably going to hear more in conversation, because I think the issue with idioms is not so much learning the meaning, but then, like you mentioned, to use them naturally and use them speaking. Because I think sometimes you learn the meaning, but that does not mean that you can just substitute it and then use it just like that other, like maybe like another word, if you say something is similar. So I think that can be the real challenge about trying to use them in context. And I think the best way to get used to that would just be more listening. I think if you could find, I did a lesson a while back talking about books, and one of the books that I had mentioned was Speak English Like Speak English Like an American. That was the title of the book, but the book was all about American idioms. And the way they taught idioms was all in dialogue. So they were kind of giving you that in writing, that dialogue. You could see how they're using the idiom in context. And I thought that was very helpful for trying to teach somebody idioms, because you're actually able to see it in writing. I think that really helps. So I think, again, more practice. We do that. I do that. In the speaking course, we talk about some idioms, and that's kind of one thing we practice, using them in conversation, in discussion, and trying to get that speaking practice. Let's see. Let's see, how do we use the expression? What ripple effects? Felipe asked, what is the, like, ripple effects? So if you're talking about the ripple effects, it's another similarity, mean like kind of like the side effects. So you have like your cause and effect, and like the main effect, the ripple effects would be like, what are some of the other things that happened because of this thing? And you would say, well, it kind of just continued, and then you have those ripple effects. Trying to think of another context or example. So it's like the continuing of like results based on some action, and it has these ripple effects. So maybe you do something and it affects somebody else, but maybe it continues affecting other people, and you could say those are some of the ripple effects. Let's see, what else do we have? I think it was, are you still in Milan? Yes, I actually currently am still in Milan at this very moment, but we will be leaving shortly, which is sad. It's not going to be a very long vacation. Emmanuel asks, he is such a flirt. What is the opposite of flirt in this sentence? So if you say somebody is a flirt, again, it means they're flirtatious, they're attracted to somebody, they're trying to make some suggestions romantically to show that they like this person. I don't know, what would be the opposite. If you say somebody's a flirt, I would just think of saying somebody's cold. Because if somebody's a flirt, I think that's like they're friendly, but they're overly friendly, maybe in a little bit of a romantic way. But if somebody's cold, it means they're unfriendly and there's maybe nothing romantic about it. That would just be the word that comes to my mind. Let's see, what else? How to use? Ne Myo asks how to use when all is said and done. So I think this is a good example. I had mentioned chunking before about learning a phrase. When all is said and done, you could think about that phrase. And it has the same, most of the time you're going to use this to start a statement or a sentence. And when all said and done, it's basically means the same thing. Well, when everything is finished or when everything is in order. When all is said and done, then we're going to do this. So it's really just a phrase that means kind of starting out, well, when we're finished doing things, when everything's finished, then we're going to move on to the next thing. So maybe you might use it at work if you're having to do something and your boss says, look, when all is said and done, then we're going to start immediately on the next project. But first we have to finish this one, when all's said and done. So again, don't focus too much on those individual words, but think about it as one phrase, one chunk, and that's a great way to then build your vocabulary. Let's see. Alab asks, do you recommend Grammarly apps as tools for correcting sentence construction? Yeah, I think it can be useful. It just depends on how you use it. If you want to try to, I guess, use it to understand some of your mistakes, I think it might help. But I notice, I think those apps, I have not personally used Grammarly. I'm very well aware of it. And I know what it can do. I've heard other people say great things about it, that it's really helped them, especially if they're having to write in a more professional setting situation and they don't want to make mistakes. But I've even noticed on emails, like Gmail, when you're doing it, it'll make some notations of some grammar mistakes. And I've always thought that was decent as well. So yeah, I think it can be good for practicing writing something and then seeing what mistakes come up. So I think, I would recommend, any of those apps. I don't know if it's something you'd have to pay for or not. So just keep that in mind. Let's see. I know it is getting a little late, and I kind of did want to circle back again and just mention to you guys, if you do want to practice your speaking, if you want to get more speaking practice, and work on, developing your speaking fluency. I'm getting ready to start the next course of Speak Up. There's still 1 week left. If you'd like to enroll, there's the my little ad for it right there. I need to change that picture. I've used it quite a bit, but that is what the course is all about. Each week we talk about a different topic. We're going to focus in on discussion about one topic. We do a lot of different speaking activities. We're going to build your vocabulary because we look at vocabulary that's related to the topic, trying to use some of the words and phrases, idioms, use them in context correctly. That's what it's all about. So it's a weekly lesson each week. This one is 8 weeks long. For more information, please check out the Speak Up course page. It's down below in the description. I'll also link it right here in the chat. And if you want to sign up, you can use, there's a voucher code, which is SPEAK10 to get a 10% discount. All right, so check that out. If you have any questions, I'll write down questions. Email me at info@interactiveenglishvideos.com. That is the email. I spelled at because I don't know if it'll let me write the actual email in this chat. I'm not sure. So check that out if you would like to join. I personally would like to join myself, but I honestly don't have any credit cards for joining. Yeah, it is. You would need to make an online payment. So if you don't have any credit cards, I know somebody else had the same issue as well, and they contacted me, and I can accept the payment through PayPal as well if you have access to that. But it would be an online payment, yes. But otherwise, I know you guys asked a lot of questions. Sorry if I did not get to some of your questions. I'm going to do this again in the future. I'll try to answer as many as possible. What I would suggest is that please write the questions in the comments, because it gives me ideas for future video lessons. And I'll try to, if I can write a quick comment and answer the question, I'll try to do that as well. So if I didn't get to your question, please write it down in the comments. But I really appreciate, well, Felipe, if you guys have any questions about the course, you can write them now. What subjects can we chat in the course? So the topics are predetermined. Like, I think the first week, the topic, we're talking about food. Another week, the next week, we're talking about being descriptive, using the vocabulary that you already know and building vocabulary. That's kind of what the topic. There's another, like a guided speaking practice we do, talking about relationships. Work is one of the topics. So some of the topics are a little broad, but again, I think that's okay, because these are topics that come up in everyday conversation, and we will focus in on vocabulary. Takayo, great to see you, Takayo. Takayo is a student at Speak Up. Thank you. Thank you, Sleepwalker. Give some shout outs. Rosalinda, thank you guys for joining me. Joe Brown, Maggie, great to see you. If you feel like your writing is stagnant, again, just keep practicing. Try to find some active writing activities. I know that can be a little challenging. It'd be like you're giving yourself homework, but I think it can help if you kind of want to jumpstart things and get things going. Let's see. All right. So thank you, Rahel, Ligia. Good to see you guys. Hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. And I'll see you next week. I'll be back for another lesson. Kareem, Lali. All right. I got to get going, and I will see you next time.